Welcome to Dear Art Producer, a podcast connecting the photography and video community with art producers. Drawing on her agency experience some years ago, photography agent Heather Elder penned an open letter to art producers discussing the finer points of working with one another. This podcast takes that idea and will introduce you to different art producers, share the stories of their diverse career paths, explore what it means to stay relevant, and examine industry topics such as marketing, estimating, directing, websites, and more.
Hi, welcome to Dear Art Producer. I am your host, Heather Elder, and today we welcome Teri Heyman, a producer at a super secret tech company not to be named, where she has worked for a little over 2 years. Her background is in production and has been in San Francisco at various places for the last 25 years. I met Teri when we worked together on a project with one of our photographers and have enjoyed getting to know her and her super secret tech company ever since. Hi.
Hi.
How are you today?
I'm good.
Thank you for lunch. That was absolutely delicious.
It was very good.
And thank you for providing this beautiful space. You're inspiring me. We talked a little bit about lunch, about how I'm trying to get out of my home office and maybe go to a WeWork space and just kind of get out in the world. And being in this environment has inspired me to keep that on my New Year's resolution list.
I love it.
Yeah, I bet. It's just, we walk around and there's all this artwork on the walls and everyone's in different corners working. And it's just inspiring to be surrounded by people who are obviously energetic and committed to what they're doing.
I'm all for working at home as well.
Yeah.
But it is good to get into the office.
That's true. Well, I think, I always like to start thinking about people's career paths. And I've been having lots of conversations over the years about since we started the podcast, about how people's experiences in life have informed where they are today. It's kind of an obvious idea, but a lot of times I think you don't think much about that. So I think in art production, your previous jobs absolutely can inform who you are, but so could some of the things that you did at another part in your life when you weren't a producer. A lot of art producers find their way here because of some random connection, because you don't go to school and learn about art production. So how did you find yourself here? Not here specifically at this place,
Sure.
but as a producer.
In a very random way as well.
Uh-huh.
I will age myself and say I watched a show called 30-something when I was very little.
Uh-huh.
And I thought advertising looked so cool.
Yeah.
And you got all these great perks and like trips and free product from clients, and it doesn't happen. At least it never happened for me. And so I was like, I'm going to go into advertising out of college. And I worked as a receptionist at a really small shop, privately owned. And they needed they had a print producer for maybe a month. And then she quit. And my boss was like, do you want to be the print? I didn't know what CMYK meant. I knew nothing. But I was like, I got like a $500 raise.
Yeah.
And I got a seat at the table in a different way besides the receptionist. And I said, the whole office was young. Like we were all in our 20s. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah, I'll go for it. And I just learned to work with really good people who knew what they were doing. Mm-hmm. Because again, I didn't know how to press check. I didn't know how to set up a photo shoot. I didn't know anything. So I had to just work with like a small group of vendors that I trusted a lot. Yeah. And then that led into me switching agencies to another small privately owned agency in SF. And they made a movie during dot-com boom #2 or whatever. And they opened up a production arm to finance and make that movie. Mm-hmm. And I moved, it just kind of made sense to kind of start working on both as a producer. Mm-hmm. And I still like it. I think print and video, it's kind of the same thing. I know people will probably disagree. But for me, it was like, with a photographer, it's just a smaller team. Mm-hmm. And on the video side, it's just a lot more people and a lot more people getting their hands in, and like more, chefs, like, that can, not mess things up, but just get involved, which makes it a little bit more complicated. So it just kind of slowly moved into more and more video. And then from there, I didn't really turn back. I just really enjoyed that process. And then was doing that for a very long time. I EP'd at a small production company and had a good long run, worked with a lot of great directors locally. And then this opportunity arose. I was actually starting to have to freelance more. So like work was getting, at least for me in the Bay Area, it was getting tighter and tighter. Agencies were bringing stuff in-house. They were going more to LA and New York and wanting to work with like really high-end directors. And San Francisco's pool is just very small and everyone knows each other. And so we were, I started taking calls for budgets that were also getting smaller and smaller that I would have turned down 3 years ago. And I'd say, okay, let me see if I can figure out how to get that shot done. And then I actually started freelancing here, and the team was so fantastic, and they offered me a full-time job, and I was like, yeah, I'll go for it. And I thought, I've never worked for a tech company. I've never worked for a large company. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of just jumped with feet.
Yeah, no, that's great. You're so fortunate to have had that opportunity.
I've been very lucky with my career. Yeah.
What are some of the skills that you learned early on? Although I know you've been producing all along, but you mentioned something like at the beginning, like you didn't even know what CMYK was, right? Someone gave you access, somebody gave you an opportunity. And then along the way, you kind of fine-tuned the skills that you needed to get to where you are today. Like, what are some of those things early on that you felt like, because you were given a chance, really helped you and you still use today?
To be honest, it goes all the way back to even like waitressing in high school and college.
You said the magic thing.
Like it's like knowing how to service people, bringing people together, but also like being firm, right? Yeah. Like for me, I'm very direct, and that's always served me well. And I'm not direct without being kind, but people know when I say something, this is like, I'll go as far as I can go. Yeah. And then when I'm like, we've got to now carry on or finish the cut or award the project. Like, I think they appreciate that. So I think, like, to be honest, like just the communication skills you learn on a thing like waitressing or in advertising where you're pleasing so many different masters is a really good skill to have.
You said the magic word because I talk a lot about being a waitress on this podcast.
Really so funny.
I was a waitress. Lorianne, who works with me, she was a waitress, and I learned everything I need to know for any job I will ever have in my career as a waitress.
Hustling.
You have to hustle.
Yeah.
You are rewarded for your hard work. You have to translate between the front of the house and the back of the house. You have 10 tables going at the same time, not at the same time. Well, they're all going at the same time, but they're all at different parts of their meal. You've got some people who are jerks. You've got some people who are super nice. At the end of the day, you're exhausted. Like, don't talk to me.
It's funny. My EP says that too. He was in wait staff, and he's like, always can trust an ex-waiter or waitress.
Yep, it's so true. Because if you survived that and you made a career of it, and we would joke at the time, we made so much money as waiters and waitresses, like such golden handcuffs. Yeah. Like there were career waiters and waitresses that when I was one that like they did, that's what they did. And I just remember thinking, wow, like they make so much money. This is so amazing. And it was always a summer job or something that got me through college. And it wasn't anything that I ever wanted to stick with, but I can absolutely see like it is if you're at a good place and you're good and you have a supportive restaurant, like you can make a good chunk of change.
I agree. In customer service, like getting good customer service these days, you're surprised when it happens.
Absolutely.
And like that's a place where people just now tip automatically. At least I do. You just tip automatically, right? But when you get good service, you think about it. Like you'll go back to a place that gives you good service, and I think that's part of what we do as well.
And or where I sit today, like I need to do that client service. I was in advertising before I became a rep, and I was an account person. So I went from being a waitress, which was all about client service, customer service. I went to be an account person, which was all about client service, to this, where I'm servicing my photographers, of course, but at the same time, I'm also servicing my clients.
Yeah.
And it's also a job of being a good translator.
Yeah.
It's important.
When I was in advertising, and I kind of like, I don't know why I separate myself. I kind of don't think but when I was like young and doing it, I always, and this probably won't go over well with like creative types, but I was always like, I follow a good account person over the creative. Like, I'm like, I think you could find good creatives, but like getting a good account person who's going to take care of you and you can trust them. And like, like to this day, like I'm always like, I'm like, sometimes like things are moving so fast here. I'm like, can I do a handshake with you? We'll figure out all the rest of the paper later. But I need to know that we trust each other. We're in this together.
Yeah.
That's for me, like the most important thing.
Yeah. It's interesting. You're saying something that's reminding me of a conversation I had with my daughter the other day. She's applying for an internship. She's 21 years old, so she's a junior in college, and it's a legit internship. And she was writing about what she wanted to learn at this internship. And we had a whole conversation about like where she is in her life and like, how do you say something that's not typically about, well, I want to learn how to write a press release and I want to learn how to do that, that sort of stuff. And we explored this idea of talent. And at that point in your life, you have no idea how to recognize good talent. But you know that you are someplace with talented people. So she kind of wrote about this idea that I need to learn about what it means to be talented and how to lead talented people. And it made me kind of reflect back on, the experiences and opportunities I had growing up in this industry and feeling like I was always surrounded by incredibly talented people. And if I were to look at my own abilities as a creative or a photographer, like I was so not talented in that field at all. But as an account person, I felt like I was talented. And as a rep, I did feel like I was talented. And it just takes a long time to kind of recognize where that talent come from and, how you get there and how to use it. Okay, so with that in mind, what's something that's kind of surprising about you that your team might say? Or people listening who know you might not know about you in terms of being the role that you are in?
I can't.
Is that a hard question?
I'm a pretty open book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
So.
Yeah. I mean, I've worked with you and you're incredibly transparent and I love that.
Yeah. I can't imagine they'd be surprised by anything.
Well, that's good. Okay. Well, let's talk about the state of the industry because you and I have both been in San Francisco for 25-ish years and we've seen a lot. Do you think it's positive? Are you enjoying the changes? Do you find it's hard for some people to find their place in this change?
I mean, it's hard I was working at such small production companies in the Bay Area. For me, they were great. We had lots of local corporate clients like PlayStation and whatnot, but I just didn't live in this other world that where I am now, where some of the budgets, I'm just like, whoa, these are like, holy cow, like how nice. Like, I was definitely in the more kind of like medium budget world, online kind of really only. So I don't have a great grasp on what's going on, but I do think like when the onset of like digital cameras kind of came into play, that was like you got more and more people who are like, I can shoot, can I? I can direct, can I? It's super competitive. And I don't have a great take on like how much is going in-house and what's going out. I will say I'm happy with going in-house at this point. It's been fun for me, but I don't have a great take on like how the city is and what's happening out there. It seems like there's a lot of freelance producers working. Mm-hmm. So
there's definitely a lot of freelance producers out there. And there are a lot of people taking clients and brands taking things in-house for sure, creating their in-house agencies, feeling like they're a little bit more nimble or a little bit more, quick. They're quicker to get something done.
I don't know if we're quicker, but I will say this, that I've learned in the last 2 years. I always liked working direct to client. I always enjoyed it because you kind of just left that layer of egos or people doing things to do things kind of by the wayside and you just get to the work and you would do it. But the creative teams that are in-house, I don't know if they get as much respect as they should. They really live with the brand.
Yeah.
And they know the brand that to such an extent, like really are such a force for the brand. And if you have a good creative team and they know it, I do think they can go faster and make better creative than someone who gets a 3-week crash course on it. And I just think sometimes they don't get the credit.
I agree with that. And I have a really good friend who's a creative director. He owned an ad agency here in San Francisco, and he was a creative director forever at big agencies, and now he's client direct. And one thing he said that really struck me and I thought was so interesting was this idea that like at the brand that he works, he's like, it's so nice to all be on the same page and not feel like you're at odds. Not that you were always at odds with your client, but you're convincing or selling or trying, it's like we all start from the same knowledge base of what that brand is. So, some would argue that that's not a good thing. Others would argue it's the best thing in the world. For him at this point in his career, he's just enjoying it because it's different than what he has had in the past. So,
I think maybe that's what I'm feeling too.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what you do in terms of viewing work and photographers and directors out there. If somebody wants to get your attention, how do they do that?
How someone gets my attention? To be honest, I will look just about at any portfolio that comes in, and if I have time, I'll look at any reel just to kind of. There's days that are slower than others, and that's my job now. It wasn't my job. I was a line producer or an EP. So now switching into, and it's not exactly clear, but it's kind of an agency producer role. My job is to know the best talent out there now. And so honestly, that's been a big crash course for me for the last 2 years. I didn't know who the reps were in town and all are, globally, and the best production companies on the list, everyone has, and the best promotion houses and the best photographers. So that has been an active part of my job, is for me to I bookmark stuff, I go back, I reach out to reps myself and just be like, hey, as you get work as it's coming in, and I'm trying to build those relationships now where some agency producers who have been agency producers just, they've got a Rolodex in their head and I don't. So that has been kind of a learning curve, but a fun learning curve. Yeah. So for me, it's a combination of my own research and then trusting my gut when I see something that I like. And then I always do get feedback from my creative team. So, and they've got strong opinions. They're all been doing the business for a long time. They all, I'll say this, they all know what they want. And I'm happy, if I can get them a short list of 3 that they're stoked on, that all 3 are great.
Having done this podcast for a long time, I love hearing how the process works in terms of actually when there's an actual project and how that list goes from 10 to 15 to 3 or whatever. And some agencies, the creatives come to the producer and say, here are the people I like. At other agencies, the producers say, here are 20. Who do you like? Sometimes it's a combination of both. How does it work here?
It's a combination. So I'll try to give a list of certain art directors they'll want 35 photographers, right? Mm-hmm. And they'll just be like, no, yes. And then then I'll have to do another search from there. But it just really depends. So in general, it's been I'll try to do a list of about nothing too much for them because they're all super busy. Yeah. So I'll try to get to a top 15 and then I'll say, but in this list, here are my top 5. Yeah. They'll always have a point of view and they may say, hey, add so-and-so to the list. And then from there, I go in with I narrow it down to whatever it is, final 5. Yeah. And then we take it to whoever needs to, maybe up the chain to finalize 2 or 3, and then we do our calls.
And that's all through their websites?
Websites, and in general, not really. So I'll start with the website. Yeah. And then I'll call either the rep or I'll call the EP. Okay. And say, especially if I really like them. Yeah. If I think the work is right, I'll say, look, this is what's coming up. I don't have anything for you yet, but if you want to give me a custom reel or a custom portfolio that gets your person the best chance in the door, and then they're always going to, of course you would do that for your client. So it'll just be on when we would need that by if they can turn it around.
Yeah, I think what I'm getting a lot of lately hearing is it used to be that we would send links. But now the art directors are like, that's too many choices. You've given me too much. And then they click onto the website and it's there's so much to look at and so much to choose from. They feel a little bit unless they have the time to really kind of dig in, they're feeling lost. So some of the requests that I've been getting is that people have been asking me to put together custom PDFs for jobs that are specific. Yeah. Which is fine. Client service, waitress, happy to do it. But in the terms of the amount of time that these photographers are spending having to curate and collect the imagery and prepare for even just being considered at this point it's piling on. So we've been looking for tools out there that can help us to make that easier. There's websites that some of the guys have and women have that have PDF creators so that you could go on and click, send it to me. We can collaborate. I can go on there, click, send it to you. We don't like this one, take this one out, that sort of thing. And we're finding that that's been helpful. But I've also found that being able to curate it reminds me of when I first started as a rep, and we would have portfolios of images like transparencies on a board or images bound to a cardboard, or not cardboard, but like, I can't think of the word right now. And then I would put together a portfolio based on what you've asked.
Yeah.
And then I would send the portfolio out as opposed to these, set portfolios.
It's crazy.
It is. It's a little crazy.
Yeah, I mean, and I get that, but I do try to not ever ask for that unless I really think the person has a good shot.
Mm-hmm.
And then we even refine more, from there. It'll be like, okay, now we're in the final 3.
Yeah.
And we'll take the art director's point of view, like, this is what's working to sell you in, especially if you're the top pick at that point.
So since you kind of had to educate yourself and develop your relationships and your favorites, like, did you use source books or magazines, or did you kind of Google around?
It was online.
You were just
so
all online?
It was all like, Ad Age's top production list for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And, all the kind of trade magazines
Yeah.
and websites that are out there that do the kind of top, and that's where I started.
Yeah.
And then was reaching out to other producers that had more agency experience about like maybe their top 5 reps that they always go to.
Yeah.
And taking classes where I could about just like how agency producers kind of work. There was kind of an internal little class that one of the consumer producers here does. And I was like, can I sit in on this? And my EP got me a seat at that table just to kind of like see how other people are thinking about production too, because it changes. Like, like I was coming from, again, like a line producer point of view, and it's completely different. So the more you learn. Yeah,
no, it's true. And the more questions you ask, the more access you have, the more opportunity comes your way. And, I think a lot of photographers need to, I don't want to say they don't think about it, but word of mouth is so important. References from other people, and there's conversations that are happening about them that they're not aware of, obviously. And there's conversations that are happening when you're presenting 10 photographers to a creative. We don't even know we're being considered. So I think you're always having to put your best foot forward, and you're always having to have that client service there.
Well, and I don't know how often this comes up with the other producers. I have no idea. But one thing I do bring sometimes to the table, especially if it's like a tough budget, a tough schedule. This place also, sometimes we always joke, like we're flying the airplane while we're building it. Like, we don't know what we're shooting in 2 weeks, but we've got a vague idea. For me, it's not just about, like, I have to trust that whoever we're bringing, whatever artist we're bringing to the table can handle it. And that my creatives trust that person. But again, I need to trust whoever my production partner is beyond the director or the photographer, because like sometimes things are moving so fast. I'll say, like, this company I know is not gonna like, if I ask for 2 extra rounds of reviews, they're gonna give it to me without chart. There's stuff like that I just know, and I will bring that up. And it's not the sexiest thing that any of the creatives want to hear. And
no, but it's going to make for a successful job.
At least, even if, and it's gone either way, where sometimes they'll go against my advice. But I always feel like it's worth saying, because, and then it comes up later,
And how about estimating? What is that process like for you? Is there a set process? Do you have cost consultants here that you work with?
We don't work with them so much, just because the producers are all pretty experienced in terms of how things work here. In general, our process is, it's basically like, if someone has a budget, we'll start with that. So a client may say, I have X amount to spend and I want to get, a video or a newspaper. And then like the creative team, so the creative team will be briefed on this, not so much the budget, but then like, I'll already be thinking, okay, well, this budget means I'm working with this level of, or, you know,
Sure.
I'll start be thinking about the level of teams I can pull in.
Yeah.
And then it really, of course, then depends what the creatives come up with. And they'll just kind of show us stuff to kind of be like, we're not holding anything back. It's just kind of as an FYI where I'm like, that one's love it, but that's probably going to take us over the budget.
Right.
And if you can sell it in and get us more money, great.
Right.
And then we go to the people, that the artists we want to work with, and we get estimates from them.
And do you always do triple bids?
It depends on the price point.
Yeah.
So if it's, or like, if it's something that a ton of people are going to see, then we do try to triple bid. But if it's under a certain amount, then and we're moving really fast on something, or
you might not have to.
My creative director was like, "Oh my God, I just want to work with this person again," and it's like we don't even need to think about it.
Right.
Then great.
Do you ever do firm bids?
We do, actually. Most of the time, we don't do a lot of. At least our team doesn't do a lot of cost plus.
Yeah.
I find I actually like it personally better.
Me too.
And I liked them when I was a line producer as well, so that I had the ability to play with the lines.
Yeah.
And if I could save money on something, I could put it to a better camera or more lighting, and it's all, at least from my point of view, it always ends up on the screen. All the producers, on what other side you are on, you're going to try to get it on the screen and not in your pocket.
Right.
So, and
you want the best possible job for the amount of money that you have.
So I also kind of feel, and I don't know if there's disagreement, but for me, it was, again, that kind of handshake deal where I don't hold money back. If I've got a certain amount, I'm not sitting on 5,000. Right. And I have that. I'm keep telling them on the front end until we have that relationship. I'm like, this is all I have. Like, and this is what the minimum of what I need. But hopefully, the process is good and you enjoy working with us. That I'm never going to ask for a favor unless I need it. Right. But then you hopefully build that relationship.
I remember when I worked with you that we had a lot of that where I'd be like, okay, we're coming in here, and you'd be like, yeah, but I literally cannot get a dime more, and you'd be like, okay, let me go see what I can do. Let's go figure this out. And then there'd be another job. I'd be like, we're coming in. I think I can make that. Can you cap it? So there was such trust there that I knew I can go to you and be like, this would be great, and you'd say no or yes, and I'd go back and we'd figure it out and
or what that meant
and whatever that meant, and it was always such a positive trade-off. Experience because the other part of that is my photographer then completely trusts the process. And when I go back to him or her and say, hey, we need to cut here because of Teri, and this is and they're like, oh my God, of course, absolutely. If I have to cut my fee, I have to do this. Let's go do it this way. They're so open to it because the process itself is so rewarding and positive.
I mean, I think that's always been my goal. I want to end everyone does, right? You want to end the project where everyone feels good about it. And that I love working with artists too. So it's like Andy, I love Andy. I was like, if I'm in Idaho, I'm going to go shoot a bird with him.
Oh, he would love that. Oh my God. I keep telling him he should run trips with all of his all his people, fans. All of his producer friends, because half the people have never done anything like that before. And if you went and did that with Andy, oh my God, that would just be amazing.
No, and he just seems to make friends wherever he goes. And that's for me. I'm like, awesome. I met this great photographer. He was a great person.
Yeah,
it was a great fun time.
Oh, that's nice that you said that. Well, what's your team like? How many people are on your team? Are there other producers that you work with?
We're about 6-7 people. And we're pretty much kind of not siloed, but we work just in kind of the group that we work with. But there's a ton of other producers here in a bunch of different other departments, and kind of the producers are kind of to the teams that they're set in.
And what's your team? You probably can't say. Oh, that's right. I was curious in the moment. That's right. And then, so do you ever interact with the other teams?
It's really, I think the goal in 2020 is to try to have a little bit more interaction, but probably not the scope I would love it. I've been trying to do a producer's happy hour forever because no one understands producers, right? Other producers. And even my mom, still doesn't get, she's like, did you come up with the idea? I'm like, no.
Yeah, I know.
Shoot the idea. I'm like, no. I'm like the mom who feeds everybody and then spanks them if they go over budget. So it's, and one of actually, woman that I consider my mentor, personal mentor, she took a job here recently. And I rarely see her, but we're going to have
Right.
lunch in a couple of weeks. So
That's
I'm
funny.
excited.
I do know a few other people who work here, and occasionally I'm like, oh, do you know so-and-so? Do you know?
And they're
like,
always
nope,
yep,
don't
it's
know them. I'm like, oh, go
crazy.
find her because
Yeah.
she's amazing. You'd really like each other.
It's really, and I wish I love producers, so I would love to. It's been nice. I've been meeting a few more, which has been just rewarding.
That's good. Well, and maybe being in the new space and like different paths
I
that
hope
you
so.
walk and
I
stuff,
hope
right?
so.
Maybe that would be good. Do you have a personal aesthetic that comes through in the work that you produce, or?
To be honest, I don't consider myself super creative at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always, even in print, I always thought I was like the hands of my art directors and copywriters. So I really trust their vision, to be honest, and I don't think I bring an aesthetic at all to the creative. I will give my opinions on stuff, and I think, again, I don't I only give an opinion on stuff when I think it's valid or whatnot. And I think there's some trust with the creatives that I've built with that, but no, I don't think I've run an aesthetic.
That's interesting because I kind of feel the same way. People are always like, oh, you're the photographer. I'm like, nope, not the photographer. You know,
Right.
I always give the same thing that you do. But I feel like, back to that talent thing, like that's just not where I excel. Like I can look at a good picture and I can tell you if it's marketable, and I can, but I can't take it the way they could, or I couldn't create an ad ever, in the way that a creative could.
I agree. It's not my skill set.
And that's not what you're here for.
Yeah. So I just try to support them and their vision as much as possible. And at the same time, because I came from the other side as a producer for directors, I also try to support their vision too, right? Because it's like, that's the happy medium of like why you hired this person. Yeah. Plus your creative team. And if you can make those two marry, and they both bring their best stuff and one's not overpowering the other, you know?
Back to your waitress.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Back to your waitress. Okay, so then just usually I end on, I know our time's running out here. If you weren't doing this, if you weren't in production and you weren't working here, and you could do whatever you want, what would you do?
I could do whatever I want. I always joke that like my backup after production is going to be like the DMV. It's like a stable government job, and I would like kill it though, right?
Oh my God, you'd be so good.
I would just be super fast, and I would get fired. I would think I would get fired because I would just like not be able to go slow.
That's hysterical.
But I don't think I would enjoy that job so much.
That's a great answer.
I think actually, I love production. I've been very lucky in my career. Like I said, if I could do this and just kind of continue to do it and pick projects as I choose and try to mix in a little bit more film again from my days before this.
I think once a producer, always a producer.
Yeah,
and you probably produce everything in your life.
My daughter and son would, my daughter and I made a flop. My daughter and my husband would agree with you.
Yeah.
On that, but we're very organized.
The person who works in my office, she was a producer. Now, I feel like she produces our office and our life. And she said, I woke up early this morning, had to deal with all this stuff about my mom. Her mom's sick. And I was like, well, thank God you're a producer. She's like, oh my God, thank God I'm a producer. Like, how would I even begin to manage this? So, like, I feel like that skill doesn't go well
to like a lot of good things. Yeah, I can plan a great vacation, and while we're on vacation, things to do, but without it being too much. I'm not super type A, just enough to like.
Yeah, do it without stress and figure it out. Wait till your daughter gets married. You're going to be all over that. Well, that is a great place to end. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, this was fun.
The waitress and the 30-something thing were like
same person
there. So I love that.
We both got fooled by advertising.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. In an industry where the rules are always changing, it's helpful to hear from those on the front line. Heather Elder is the visionary behind notesfromarepsjournal.com. Visit her website for industry updates, stunning photography and video, and the artist behind the work.